What is up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we are coming at you each and every week with a fresh service to debrief in effort to send biblical truth. What better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I have to my left and right some amazing guys, and you should hear some of the behind-the-scenes conversations already. But I have Mark Carey. You should probably be in the other seat today. But you are our color commentator today.
Okay.
Not the teaching pastor.
Good.
So you can just
like it.
You can let this other guy over here
like it.
do all the comments. We have Don Hartog with us, who is here this past weekend to cover 3 different sessions, the multiple worship services included there. So thank you so much for being here, Don.
Mm-hmm.
We appreciate all of your time and energy, and just service to our body, if I say that as well, of putting all the thought and energy into unpacking these truths for us about the future and what God has shared. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well,
And I will say that is what we miss. We enjoyed it for 17 years, that ability to handle the word and field questions, but go in depth. And our body was certainly enriched by that.
yeah, the turnout was great. So thank you guys
Yes.
for being a part of that and participating in that way. And Don, you mentioned the people there in those seats. Those are the ones who are hungry for
And I'm
this
sure there's
content.
others that weren't able to make it, but it was sure an honor to be here. And I talked with my co-pastor this morning. He's actually now title is executive pastor. I'm the teaching pastor, and he's actually my boss. But I was talking with him about it and explaining, and in the conversation there was an idea about how many people were there and things. And I mentioned to him, and I said, what really is important to me isn't how many are there; it's how hungry they are. That's what energizes you. If you see on their faces a teachability, wanting to learn, there can be 5 people, 10 people, there can be 1,000 people, and that for me, that's what energizes is to see teachability.
And and if you play some of that back in your mind, you would make certain comments, and you could just hear among the crowd like, "Aha," or "Oh," or there was this quiet involvement.
There's an engagement.
Yeah. And
You sure you didn't hear him say, "He must be nuts"?
That's what some of these cards are here saying. But Mark, I'll come your way first and just allow you to give your version of a recap of the weekend and what you felt happened and what stood out to you.
Well, I got a week off from the pulpit. No. Well, in the series of Daniel, you're teaching through a book of the Bible, like Daniel, that is prophetic in so much of its scriptures, and there's going to be a lot of questions. Because Daniel, there's huge gaps in Daniel. It's not meant to be the end all, know all book on prophecy, and if I was going to teach Daniel again, I may take 3 weeks to delve into this and fill in more, or take another 3 weeks or 4 weeks to delve into this, a kind of aside. You do an aside teaching to fill in them. But I want to be true to the book of Daniel. I'm going to stay with Daniel and what did he? It's called biblical theology instead of systematic theology. We're not systematizing the eschatological thinking. We're dealing with what does Daniel have to say, and maybe in 10 years from now we'll have what Matthew has to say. But so you can't do that. But I know that there's a lot of questions, and so there's a lot of like, well, but. And so I knew Don was going to be coming at some point to visit his family back here in Winchester area. So it was a conversation about that, if you were to come back, it would be great if you could maybe do an Olivet Discourse like you've done here before. And then Don, you said, well, when are you finishing chapter 9 of Daniel? And wow, wasn't that interesting? That was about the same time that you were going to be on vacation at the Outer Banks, and all that worked out.
So you're saying that the timing of this seemed to be perfect, and from my perspective of where we are in the study, to say it makes sense to pause, coming off of just the explanation of the 70 weeks of Daniel, where that falls, and how that hits with what Jesus was saying.
In fact, I think that's how we would have done it. So say if Don, you were say coming back in April for a family time, and we would have been in chapter 7, I don't think that would have been the time to do the Olivet Discourse. We would have brought you back. Now it just so happens in the timing that it was
perfect timing, because in the Olivet Discourse, Jesus makes reference to the book of Daniel, chapter 9.
Yes, that's right.
And so it's an easy flow.
Yeah.
So
That's
great.
A God thing.
Yeah.
And, I appreciate Don's willingness to do it. The thing, if you noticed on either Sunday morning or Sunday night, Monday night, when you see a Bible teacher in action using their gifts, being used by the Lord in their giftedness, they're energized, and when you do have hungry-hearted people who are, you just, in spite of maybe a little bit of the pain and the arthritis and stuff, you're engaging, you're energized. So it was the timing was perfect. It was a God thing. And it was the break. I think that was the time. We could have gone right on into chapter 10, if I was teaching through the book. But that was the right time to say, if we're going to add a little aside teaching, I think it was important, and we did it then. And the Olivet Discourse was the right thing. I do want to mention. I meant to mention this Monday night at the conclusion. Don did a whole 6-week series in 2019 on the captain. It's entitled "The Captain Speaks." So it's on our website under not old sermons, but whatever it's called.
There's an archive
past sermons.
Yeah.
So you go to that link, past sermons, and then go to the year 2019, and then Google down. I think it's the second page. You'll see "The Captain Speaks." That was a 6-part where you were able to fill in a lot more, and that's where you handle the parables.
The parables,
and things like, yeah. And you added some new things. You did add some new things from
and
5 years
a couple
ago.
changes. Changes of views on a couple things that you continue to learn and
learn and grow.
Well, we still have a lot of these index cards, and I'm not saying we're able to get to all of them, but the key one of the key purposes of doing a sermon spotlight podcast like this is to give the teaching pastor the opportunity to be like, well, what was on the cutting room floor? What if you had more time would you want to cover? Because I know you said that a couple different times as you're saying, you're like, if we had more time, I would explain this. If we had more time, you probably mentioned that 5 or 6 times. You have a moment now. Pin down kind of what's the key thought.
Optimal word, moment.
Optimal, yeah.
Now I got to remember. When did I say that?
Sure, to kind of pass on. I mean, you said that a few different times, but what really stands out of like, okay, this is something that I think we should pass on to the church
well,
now.
I remember one for sure, and then I wanted to also mention something. Well, let me actually, if I could, Mark, just
take the lead.
Something that Mark said, just to say something on that matter, and then I'll answer your question. Peter tells us in 2 Peter that no prophecy of Scripture is a matter of one's own interpretation. And in the introduction of the booklet that was made, I made explanation of what that text is saying. And basically that no single book of the Bible tells us all the details of eschatology. And so I've illustrated it with our church in Kansas. I brought a jigsaw puzzle one Sunday, and I put that puzzle out there, a 1,000-piece puzzle. And, people that put puzzles together like that, they know to get the border first, get all the ones that have that side edge, and try to get that border first, and then you fill in, and you keep looking at the big picture, and you kind of figure out the colors and where what goes. But one of the things that that with a puzzle piece and how they're designed and printed this way is actually remarkable, because no two pieces are exactly alike. And you got to make sure that it snaps in nice, that it fits. And there's been times if you've put a puzzle piece together and you put it in, but you kind of got to force it in, and it doesn't. There might be a little bit of an air between this piece and that piece. Then this piece isn't fitting. And in study of eschatology, so you've got eschatology woven throughout all of the Bible, but let's pick out the books that have the most. So you've got obviously Revelation and Daniel. You've got Matthew's Olivet Discourse. You've got the book of Zechariah. You have Joel. You have 2 Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. And you've got all these puzzle pieces. And our role that God has called us to is put that puzzle together, but make sure it fits. And if you're trying to force something in there that doesn't fit, it's got to blend all together. Otherwise, you better start questioning whether your interpretation or you're putting the puzzle, right piece at the right place. So,
and some of the questions that were handed to us have
right,
that
exactly.
in mind.
What about this passage? What about
right,
that? And so
right,
forth.
right. I'll let you share on this too, Mark, because you were talking about hermeneutics earlier,
but we got his original question.
Fire away. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay.
Fire away.
One of the ones that I remember saying, if we had time, I would deal with it. I didn't even share two reasons why we didn't deal with it. One is time. The other one is I didn't want to leave something that is seemingly can even appear to be far-fetched, and then not devote very much time to it and not have time for questions as it, because there are some points that really stretch you and make you say, man, I've never heard that before. I'm not so sure. And you don't want to bring in things like that in a series like this and throw a monkey wrench into the whole deal. The one that I think is a spectacular prophecy is about in chapter 11, where you have the two witnesses and their ministry that replicates Moses and Elijah and the plagues, and also, on the positive side, proclaiming Jesus to people. Then they're killed. But the text tells us they're killed by the beast who was indwelt by the spirit from the abyss. That is not explained until later in the book in chapter 17 about the spirit from the abyss. And I would go ahead and publicly say that a very prominent prophecy teacher by the name of Arnold Fruchtenbaum has a great deal to offer. I would disagree with him. He believes that Revelation is written chronologically. I really disagree with that. It's thematically. So, there's something later on that fits on something earlier and it's designed that way. It's more thematic.
Kind of like Daniel too.
Like Daniel as well. So the prophecy of that dealt with that these spirits in the abyss were spirits of former Roman emperors. Because he says the city of the seven hills, 5 that were, 1 is, and 1 is yet to come and reign for a short time, which the 7th of those first 7 emperors, he reigned, I think it was 2.5 months. So that was fulfilled. And I would like to have explained more about that, and I would also then have liked to give a strong idea of which of those emperors it would likely be. And it would lead to the fact that the emperor that was the greatest personal power in the world at the first advent will be repeated at the second advent. So anyway, but again, in a sermon like that, you don't want to raise up such question and then leave it so unanswered. And that's one of those, if I had more time. Plus, it's a little more one that will make you think, oh boy, is that stretching it or not? And I get that. I understand that. So
there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those.
Yeah.
Right. And like I've mentioned several times in the series, I don't want to jump into this is that, speculations that are presented as if they're facts when they're not known facts in the Bible. They're guesses. And we have to really be careful, because prophetic teaching is it's very attractive to many, and it is fascinating to many. And there's a temptation of a teacher to want to present fascinating things that you can step over a boundary by doing that. You gotta make sure your pride is at bay. You humbly present the scriptures.
Yeah.
And this series title is somewhat accurate, The Prophetic Bridge, that we're really looking at Daniel being a primary kind of component of looking at this puzzle piece and revelation. But what Jesus is doing here in this discourse is really giving more puzzle pieces and bridging that gap.
Exactly. That's couldn't have been said better, Mark, is that the purpose of this discourse is to match some of those pieces together. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
You got to wonder. I mean, the disciples asked those couple questions, and the Spirit's probably leading them to allow that to be a platform for Jesus to say this in that moment, in that time, in that place of the Mount of Olives. And you gave a picture, an image of that, and you've been to Israel many times, and just the feeling that I got when I was there the one time of like, wow, this is a real place, a real location, and this is where it happened before, and it's going to happen again for his return. It does come to life when you are in Israel, and knowing the political scene now of when people can travel and be there is certainly different now. But just that knowing that Jesus had a purpose to say exactly what he wanted to say in that moment, to give some clarity, I think is valuable.
One other thing that comes to mind, I don't think I did say on this one if I had more time, but I know that one of the persons that submitted a card had an excellent question, is why in Matthew the chapter starts out at chapter 24 with the destruction of the temple, but then it jumps right into futuristic things much farther down the road when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, not long, just a few decades after this question was asked, and just a few years after Matthew wrote his book. I just want to give an answer to that, and that is that Matthew did not answer that, but Luke does. So go to Luke chapter 6, and there's more thorough examination of answering that question about the destruction of the temple, which was in 70 AD, and how that blends into things that are still futuristic. So
one of the other questions, similar, I'll just read it from a hermeneutical perspective. Why is, and I'm going to butcher this, Antiochus, thank you, Epiphanes, life in action is considered a model. So they're saying the interpretation hermeneutically is that it's a model of the man of lawlessness instead of a fulfillment. So how do you make that distinction of that? Was he or was he not really fulfilling it, or giving a model, an example of that? So somebody's kind of just asking for that interpretation of what happened with the temple in 70 AD, and how was he the true man of lawlessness?
Go ahead.
Say that again.
From a hermeneutical perspective.
Why can it be concluded that Antiochus Epiphanes is not the fulfillment of the man of sin?
Who's Antiochus Epiphanes?
Yeah.
Well,
there's that he basically
that
slaughtering
Daniel,
a pig and blaspheming God, and that people were calling people to worship him. Have there been people in the historical past been a potential fulfillment of that?
Yeah. The only thing that I see in Daniel 8 that I think we need to clarify, in the vision in Daniel 8, he sees these. Verse 21 talks about the shaggy goat. He gives the interpretation. The shaggy goat represents, it says, the kingdom of Greece. The large horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Broken horn, and the four horns arose in its place. Those we know. So you take the previous Daniel 7 image. You had the winged leopard with the four heads. So that was Greece. The four generals we know historically came from that. And so Daniel 8 fits with that same perspective. The shaggy goat is the kingdom of Greece, he says. And so there we are. It's Greece. And so you had the four horns that arose in that place. of the broken horn. So there's Alexander the Great, the four horns as generals, and in its place represent four kingdoms which arise from the kingdom. And then out of that comes this other horn. So it's coming out of Greece, whereas we know from the previous chapter 7, the little horn is this beast that Revelation talks about. That's from the fourth beast, which is Rome. So this is coming out of Greece. And so now you look historically, who fit that description that is being prophesied here from Daniel's time. It's Antiochus Epiphanes, who prefigures the coming beast. But I think in the focal point of Daniel 8, that is referring to Antiochus Epiphanes,
right,
because he comes from the third beast, which is clearly Greece, whereas the beast comes from the fourth, the coming beast of Revelation is coming from the fourth.
Precursors fulfill things only in part. Fulfillment is they fulfill something, the prophetic, in full. So like I mentioned in the Olivet Discourse, even the plagues of Egypt are precursors, because you can see, and I did a message on this in Kansas, didn't do it here because it takes a whole 30 minutes to do it, is the parallel of all the Egyptian plagues under Moses and all the trumpets in Revelation. And there's no doubt that those Egyptian plagues were precursors, but they were localized. The full fulfillment of those would be in the eschaton for the whole world to experience.
Yeah. There's enough indicators in Daniel 8 that this other horn that comes from Greece comes from one of the four generals, from one of the four. So was there somebody in history that arose that was horrendous villain towards Israel? Well, again, it's Antiochus Epiphanes, but it can't be.
But cannot be the man of lawlessness.
The man of sin.
The man of sin.
Right, because he's going to come from Rome.
Yeah.
And so...
That makes sense. So a couple other questions. This is an easy one potentially, but just how do you explain that the days will be shortened? There's that phrase. What does shortened? What does shortened mean?
Yeah, it's simply just that they're going to be limited because the bowls are so severe. The third set of bowls, the third set of judgments are called the bowls. They're in chapter 16 of Revelation. They're so severe that the whole world would be dead if it went any longer than it did. And so unless those had been shortened, no one would be delivered. No one would survive it at all.
So the interpretation, not the days, not 24 hours being shortened, but like the life expectancy of the earth, essentially.
Right.
Is being
all of
shortened.
humanity would have been destroyed had not there been a set limit on those bowls, which were 1,260 days.
Which Jesus anticipated in Matthew 24 when he said similarly, unless these days have been shortened, no life would live.
Yeah. Yeah.
We did receive a couple questions about Daniel, and I think it's going to be covered where we go from here. But I'll just bring up one of them, and again, maybe this could be a bridge. Just defining the abomination of desolation, and so you referenced that a couple of times, Don, and just I think probably intentionally didn't touch too much on it. So, Mark, I'll come your way first. Is that something that we're going to get to?
Yeah. Well, Daniel isn't very. It just says that it's that most difficult verse to interpret in Daniel 9:27. The one that makes desolate on the wings of abomination, whatever. So I don't think there's enough in Daniel to let us know. And then you go hundreds of years later, and Jesus is talking about what Daniel talked about, and he goes back to abominations of desolations. And I don't think there's still that much clarity until you get to Revelation. And so we know enough, and Don, you brought it up, something is going to take place when this man of sin enters the temple and demands worship to himself in a way that is abominable. And but you got to kind of wait till the book of Revelation to get to that.
Get to the fullness of that.
Yeah. Do you have any more insight about if we were to look ahead and we were watching TV and the news report, Fox News alert, something's happened in the Jewish temple. What do you think that would look like? What do you think it'll be? Speculating. Sorry.
No, well, the we find in Revelation 11 where that is referred to. There's two beasts now. There's another beast that shows up. So there's the beast of the sea, the beast of the land. Now the reason one is the sea and the other land is that the word sea in the Old Testament, 3 different occasions in the Old Testament, sea is representative of the Gentile world. There's something out of the book of Acts I'd love to comment on, but we don't have time, and on that whole issue. But then the other one is the beast of the earth, and the word earth in Greek is the same word for land. It can be whatever best translation, but let's just say the beast of the land, which would be the land we would be thinking of Israel. So likely that second beast is a Jew. The first beast is a Gentile. And the second beast is then called the false prophet. And the beast of the sea is referred to in Thessalonians as the man of sin. He's referred to in Revelation as the beast or the beast of the sea. But the beast of the land or the false prophet, he is the one that makes sure that the image of the beast of the sea is set up in the temple and that people worship that beast. Remember, I made reference, Caesar Augustus's image was set up in 2 temples in the first century when this was written. And people worshiped him as a god. And again, I think that that's a preliminary, it's a precursor, it's an example or a sample of that type of thing. But we don't understand the magnitude of the temple in the Jewish eyes and the cleansing that it was. People had to go through cleansing to even enter into the courtyards. They had to go through these mikvahs and all of this holiness emphasis. And then this man defiles the temple, marches in there, sets himself up to be God, and then this beast of the land sets up his image and says, if you don't worship him, you'll be killed. And that's, of course, when Jesus says, when you see that happen, get out immediately, because they'll be in hot pursuit of you. And so it's a major deal. And one of the things, you mentioned you went to Israel. Isn't it interesting, even today, that how sensitive that the whole nation of Israel is sensitive in the sense that so many people don't think they should exist. Narrow that down to Jerusalem, and then narrow that down to the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount becomes the most sacred piece of property on the earth. I don't even remember who said it, but I taught a class for people that go into Israel, and I have the notes, and I can't remember who said it, but they said something like this. Israel is the apple of God's eye, and Jerusalem is the pupil, and the twinkle in the pupil is the Temple Mount. And now it's defiled by a Gentile that the world is supposed to worship and be killed. The magnitude of what they would consider as abomination.
And you can see that did happen with Antiochus Epiphanes.
Yeah,
that's right. 187, whatever it was. And so you can see where that was. Some people could have said, oh, that must be the fulfillment.
And he sacrificed a pig, did he not?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but again, it's a precursor of what is to come.
So I'd like to kind of just summarize and wrap this all up by taking a little bit of a spiritual look to what does all this mean to us. One of the things you said in your sermon was, this is valuable, and this should be studied and understood and not ignored. And you said, I'll talk more about it, which you did. You gave a couple minutes of it on Monday night. But I wanted to just allow you guys to speak to, our church who's watching and listening right now, again, to really emphasize and hit home, answer the question, why should I care? Why does this matter? And how is this going to impact my life? Yeah. And how can I draw closer to God because of that?
Let me just start because this is going to be kind of another question, but you explained, and we have over the years, we are what we call a pre-tribulational rapture, that the church will be taken out before this, and various times you said, so why should it matter to us if we're not going to be here? But I did want to go back and and say several reasons why we believe that. One was that what you mentioned in Thessalonians of that we will be delivered from the wrath to come, and you made that explanation that's salvation, that deliverance from this coming wrath, and he mentions that at the beginning, chapter 1, verse 10 of Thessalonians, and at the end, chapter 5, and so that I think is a really powerful argument. The other one is back in Daniel. I made an emphasis of this in teaching in Daniel 9. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city. He's talking to the Jews. There's no way around that. You can't say this is the church. Well, you can also say it's little green men. You can say anything you want it to say. The question is always, what does the text say?
Right.
So the text said 70 weeks are decreed for your people. And in Daniel's prayer, he's talking about the Jews, my people, the Jews, and my holy city, Jerusalem.
No doubt about it.
No doubt about it. And so we can account for 69 of those weeks historically. There's a 70th week that remains. That is for the Jewish people. And so just as the first 69 weeks it was for the Jewish people, and not the spiritual entity called the body of Christ. So the 70th week as well. If we're just, it's a question of hermeneutics and explanation. So I think those are a couple of good arguments of why we're not going to be in that 70th week. But like you said, there are good godly people who take totally different views on that.
There are, and this is something could provoke a little bit of argument with my friends who are either holding not to a literal millennial reign or something like this. But I have thought this, and I'm going to, what are you going to do, fire me now?
Yeah.
So think of this. Jesus admitted that Satan was the ruler of this world, and he accomplished and robbed the world in Genesis 3 when man fell into sin. And now the battle of the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, fulfilled in Christ, begins. And in the very first verse of the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and he gave dominion over the earth to mankind. Then you have Satan tempting, man succumbing to the temptation, sin into the world. Jesus acknowledges him as the ruler of this world. The man of sin, as this whole prophetic scheme plays out through the Bible, and particularly the book of Revelation, and at the end, just before this final battle when these armies come down from Armageddon, is at the pivotal point of who is going to be the permanent ruler of this world. And as taught that, of course, Jesus comes out of the heavens and defeats Satan and the man of sin and the defeat that takes place there, and then this kingdom is set up for 1,000 years. If you don't believe in the kingdom being set up and now ruled by Jesus, are we then saying that when Satan won in the garden that God forfeited? He was not going to forfeit his world. He won it back. And he wins it back at the end of that 70th week when the Son of God, the King of Kings, comes out of the heavens and defeats the man of sin, because at that point, that battle would determine who would rule the world from then on. And he wins back the world. And that's why I think not only Genesis 1:1 created the heavens and the earth, but the Lord's Prayer. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it already is in heaven.
That's right.
And I think that without believing in a millennial reign of Jesus on this physical earth, we would have to say that God went ahead, okay, I lost, and we'll just start over, create a new heavens and new earth. Nah.
The story is so incomplete.
It is incomplete
without
the millennial kingdom.
Yeah, that.
And the preterist view that believes that the fulfillment of these things in Revelation already took place in 70 AD, I think in essence does that.
Yeah.
Diminishes God in a way.
It does.
I mean, if you want to be harsh enough about that.
He wins it. He wins the world back to his rulership. He gives it to his son.
Yeah. And again, we could take another hour to talk about the hermeneutics of that, how the more of a literal interpretation brings you to that conclusion. Did you guys talk about that on the Friday?
Not about
hermeneutics,
Not specifically
figurative.
about eschatological things,
Yeah.
but we can cover just a hair of it right now. If you
Okay,
have-
just in
go
a
for it.
statement.
Yeah.
In a statement, you can do this. I think when we talk about hermeneutics, interpreting the scriptures, we talk about literal interpretation, and of course that doesn't mean there's not figures of speech. But when it comes to prophetic sections, eschatological teachings, why there's so much imagery, beasts and horns and different things, and upon what basis do you make a literal interpretation? Or why is that?
Yeah, I think that the word that I liked, and was taught this in seminary, the better word than even literal is normal, because you already said it. Literal interpretation doesn't mean that there's the absence of figures of speech. And figures of speech are part of everyday language. We use it every day. We use it so much we don't even know we're using it, but we use figures of speech all the time to mean something other than what is literal. And so literal interpretation, I think that normal interpretation recognizes figures of speech, but its primary lens of interpretation is to take something literal unless it's obviously a figure of speech. Apocalyptic literature, namely Revelation, where you've got beasts and horns and so forth, and Daniel is apocalyptic, makes it a little bit more difficult. But when you have numbers that are stated like 3.5 or 70 or these types of things, there has to be good reason to take them figuratively and not literally. We should always take something literally unless it's obviously meant to be figurative, and I think that we can make those distinctions.
And that is a type of hermeneutic. It's a type of interpretive process. Others have a different type of interpretive process when it comes to prophetic scripture, and you can look at them and weigh them. It's a different approach. The more normative, literal approach is going to safeguard against mishandling of the text, it seems like.
You said it a while ago when you said it could, if it's not for just the Jews, it could be for little green men. Because the church isn't mentioned, but they say it's the church. Well, the church isn't in there.
Right.
Okay, so how do you know it's the church versus little green men? In other words, when you use a hermeneutic that allegorizes everything, there's no end to the possibilities.
It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery
Where do
slope.
you go? I mean, when you're looking at
Right.
the bowls or the trumpets and things that Revelation is saying is going to happen, well, did it not happen back, like you said, in Moses' time?
Yeah.
And then where do you go? Was the Garden of Eden figurative?
Right.
How far down the path are you
And
going to go with
there's
the
people that
allegorical
go there
components to it?
that far. There are Christians that go that far.
Yeah. So I think being as accurate as you can with sections like this on prophecy are helpful in the sense that, like the rapture question, it prepares us. There's some very practical things about that can be practical in terms of evangelism. What you described on Sunday night and Monday night, and what the Book of Revelation describes, you wouldn't want your worst enemy to have to face that.
Yeah.
And there is a call to be burdened for, even the judgment seat of Christ. Knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade men. There is a sense of a motivational aspect to prophecy that I think is very practical.
And one thing I left last night driving home, and I thought, oh, rats, I forgot to do that. And I have that often. And so this this podcast gives me a chance to do something, is that I wanted to tell the people why do we study these things? The last 10 verses of the Bible tell us.
Oh, yeah, you said you were going to do that too.
And I
yeah.
forgot. So I'm going to do that right now.
Good.
And behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me to give to everyone according to his work. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. And then down, a couple verses later, verse 17, and the Spirit and the bride say, come, and let him who hears say, come, and let him who thirsts come. Whoever desires, let him take the water of life freely. Mm. And what I see are the two major benefits of studying eschatology, particularly the book of Revelation, but it can be applied to all eschatology. For the non-Christian, drink the living water. Put your faith in Jesus Christ for eternal life. He's the truth. He's coming back. You can have the guarantee of eternity with him through faith in him. Drink that living water. Because in John's theology, the living water is the message of eternal life. Secondly, for believers, be prepared. Be ready, because we will stand before him. And I'm coming quickly. My reward is with me to judge every man according to his work. Don't believe that he's going to be delayed. Take it seriously and desire to be found by him in good standing, in fellowship with him, treating each other well, all those things that the parables teach. And so I think that summarizes the two major messages. To the unbeliever, put your faith in Christ. To the believer, be ready.
And as 1 John talks about, so that we will not shrink back in shame at his coming.
Exactly.
Real quickly, 2 Peter talks about, since these things are to be storied in this way, what sort of people, what manner of people are we to be in holy conduct and godliness? Explain now, 12, looking for and hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be destroyed.
Yeah.
What sense do we hasten it?
You caught me. That we hasten the coming of God?
Yeah. We could talk offline about that, because I know you've preached on it before. But the point there is Peter's raising the practical, what manner of people ought we to be in our conduct and holy conduct. The sober reality of this happening should not be lost on us. If we're not studying prophecy, if we're not like you said, 28% or whatever it is of the scriptures, if
that's prophetic, yeah.
Yeah, if all we hear, and you brought it out, is, this week we're going to do, or this series is 3 ways to avoid anxiety, and 7 sermons on how to love your family, and 4 ways to get over your anger. Okay, there's a place for that, and that can be practical in Christian living. But I might say, so what? Who cares if I'm less angry?
Yeah.
Or less? What? I don't care. Okay, maybe it'll go well for me. I won't get kicked out of my home. No, there's something far more of an eternal value of the judgment seat of Christ,
right,
and for unbelievers.
Okay, I get you now what you're saying. I thought you were saying, how can we get his coming to be sooner than what it is?
Well, that's really another good question.
No,
okay.
Not going to happen.
Okay.
Bad question.
But yes, I'm going to go out on a limb here. The teaching of the judgment seat of Christ, and I know people at FBC probably think that's all I eat. But I do get burdened about how much it has been discarded, ignored by Christians, especially in America. I think suffering Christians have had a much more open mind to it, because it brings them hope and it gives them perseverance. But I think that we need to realize a sobering truth, and I will stand by this. The judgment seat of Christ is going to be a very joyful occasion for many, but it's not going to be a joyful occasion for all. And it wouldn't, to omit that second part out of our teaching is to avoid, number one, some teachings that are clear in Scripture, and number two, it doesn't bring the fullness of the doctrine. The fullness of the doctrine contains both. So Paul says we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that we might give an account what we have done in the body, both good and bad, knowing therefore the fear of the Lord. I go out and persuade men. Peter says in 1 Peter 1:17 that we live our lives in fear during our time of stay on the earth, meaning we're always cognizant that he could come back anytime. How do we want to be found? There's another one of those, driving home from church last night thinking, oh, rats, that's another one I forgot. And I actually had it in my notes, and I just didn't do it. Teaching Revelation chapters 2 and 3 about the 7 churches, and some of them were commended, but most of them, there was something that needed to be changed, and he calls them to repentance. And then if they repent, he says, you will receive, and he outlines an element of reward that will come to them. And the beauty of those 2 chapters is, and I heard a person say it, and so I took it and used it in my sermon. I thought that's a great way. Is that, we can go down the street and we get to an intersection, there's a sign that says no U-turns, no U-turn, no U-turn. But Revelation 2 and 3 teaches us, while we're still living, God says you can make a U-turn now. And if you do, you can have a good appearing at the judgment seat. And people need to say, forget about your past. Forget about your past. Your past is done. God's more concerned about that U-turn. And we have that available as long as we have breath to come to him and say, God, from today is a day that I want to walk with you, and I want you to change my life. And that is the person that can stand confident at the judgment seat of Christ when he returns. And I love that. God always invites U-turns as long as we have life today.
And I love how you answered that question last night with that balance of the talents and the use of that, with the perspective of that truth, of the reality of understanding what Scripture says about the judgment seat, but then the grace given to us. And there's that constant balance of not having over guilt or anxiety with the fear of living for God properly, taking the focus off of ourselves in a way that allows him to do the work through us.
Yeah, putting too much on ourselves. And sometimes that comes from a wrong conception of God. And we think he's just loading us under, and then we keep failing, and so then we feel even worse, and it's a downward spiral. And I do believe it's very important that we come to grips with who God is. And I can't answer the question for everybody else, but that we would be able to have him graciously show us what is the assignment that he has for us in terms of what we do. For some, it's to be a homemaker. And for others, it's, William Carey, the founder of Foreign Missions. His sister was bedridden for 50 years, and she spent 50 years praying for her brother. That was her assignment. And it's not only what we do, but also who we become. And we become like Christ as we submit to him and implement the spiritual resources that he's given us for supernatural change.
Yeah. If I can even add to this final thought of why does this matter? You look at scriptures in the one another's, and here BTC classes this coming summer are going to be looking at the one another's. Look at it from a perspective of how does the one another, how is it circumferenced by the future and by the hope that there is with the things to come, and in spurring one another on. What does Hebrews 10 say? As all the more as we see the day approaching. There's this kind of circumferencing of how we can encourage one another while we're in the here and now, knowing the future and spurring one another on, which also then enhances our worship. And so there's this component of we can have a better perspective of worshiping God, knowing that, the end is secure. The future is there.
Which is how Peter ends his second epistle, which is full of eschatological truth. But he ends it with verse 18, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Great way to end.
Yep.
I really enjoyed, one of the things I really, really enjoyed about the weekend, of course, I'm sitting in the front row, was listening to the people sing. It was a real blessing of there wasn't just noise. There was heartfelt worship of the truths that were being put up on the screen. It was a blessing.
Well, it was a blessing to have you here as well. I know our congregation certainly appreciates it. Thank you once again. We've said this, thank you, but your time is valuable. And being away from your home in Kansas, and yes, having vacation with your family here and being around is helpful, but you still dedicated hours to prepare for it, hours to be here. So,
and he misses me so much, he will be back.
That's right. And if you want me back to speak sometime, do it during tornado season.
Oh, there you go. That's right. Well, we'll have God sovereignly plan that and schedule it for where we are as a church. Well, Mark, thanks for being here as well and adding your take and perspective. Don, thanks again. Guys, just continue to submit your questions and thoughts. What we didn't get to today, feel free to submit them to the church, and you can contact the church office if there are certain questions that didn't get addressed. Don, I know he mentioned to me offline here that he would potentially look at those, review them, and submit some answers. So the cards that I have in my hands, actually, if we didn't get to them, Don, you're graciously going to look at them. I'm handing them over to you now. There you go.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that information, which, by the way, all 3 of Don's sessions are available online as well. So if you were only able to make it to 1 or 2 of them, go to our church website, and we're going to send an email and some social media posts about that as well.
And why don't you add the link to the 2019 series, The Captain Speaks.
We'll put that in this episode's link as well. So, guys, the fact of the matter is that sermons are not meant just to take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love and God bless.